All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome this morning to Navigating Data-Driven Instruction using the Interim Assessment Blocks. And we are going to introduce you and tell you a little bit about ourselves. You have two presenters on today. We have Glitter Gal Cass and Glitter Gal Tanya. Tanya, say hi.
Hi, everyone.
And we are both on-site instructional coordinators for the Victor Elementary School District up in the high desert. You probably know where we are. However, if you don't, you pass by us on the way to Las Vegas, typically. And between us, we have over 30 years of teaching experience. We are also Google certified trainers. But more importantly, in regards to this session, we are Smarter Balanced performance task item reviewers. So we've gone through and reviewed those tasks before they've made it on the test. We're also Smarter Balanced Tools for Teachers contributors and contractors. And if you don't know what Tools for Teachers is yet, I'm sure by the end of this conference, you will know what Tools for Teachers is, and we will talk about Tools for Teachers today as well. So we contribute to all those wonderful resources and lessons that you'll find in Tools for Teachers. We are both induction reflective coaches, so we like to help our new teachers. I think it helps us keep relevant and understanding where our new teachers are coming from when they're coming into our classroom. So we really love working with them. And then while she's being a professor at Brandman University, I spend my summers grading the Smarter Balanced performance tasks. And I've done ELA and math for the elementary and middle school grade spans. So I've done a little bit of both because I wanted to have the perspective of both and then be able to share about my experience. So welcome today. We're excited to have you here. And together we make up Glitter Gals EDU.
All right, thank you, Cass. We are going to talk today about the interim assessment blocks. So before we jump right in to the actual work that we're going to do with the assessment blocks, we want to build a little bit of background, making sure that we're all operating under the same understanding and definition of what we're thinking about when we think about the interim assessment blocks. Just with a quick show of virtual or real thumbs, who has real live experience with the interim assessment blocks already? Okay, I see some thumbs up and some thumbs down. So that's good. That helps us just kind of know our audience a little bit better. So when we think about the interim assessment blocks, it's important that we understand here in California, things get a little bit tricky when we're thinking about, is it CASP? Is it Smarter Balanced? What is it? Are they the same thing? Are they synonymous? Are they different? And so just to clarify, Smarter Balanced is the actual creator, right? So they're the creator of the online assessment system, we call it. It's a complete system of supports. And the Tools for Teachers is one part of that. And so when you think about Smarter Balanced, it's sort of the overarching umbrella of everything, right? And then when we think about California, we think about the CASP. So the CA at the beginning of CASP stands for California. That's why it's inside the globe as part of the icon. So to help us remember, that's California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress. So this is sort of the California version, if you will, although the versions are somewhat different state by state, depending on what the state's end goal and end result are that they're looking for. Our California CASP system, if you will, is the language arts and math portion from Smarter Balanced, but then also we can't forget about the CAST, the science test, we can't forget about our LPAC assessment, and all of those other California-based assessments that we give that are all part of this CASP system, which has roots from the Smarter Balanced performance task and computer adaptive portions of the language arts and math tests. So hopefully that kind of clarifies how sort of everything fits together. So California CASP system is our California version, and in that system we have the language arts and math tests that come from Smarter Balanced themselves. So to help sort of clarify all of those pieces together. Then when we think about the interim assessment blocks, they're multifaceted as well. So that first ICA image that you see there, the full block. So think about these as sort of a practice run of the final CASP test that our kiddos take in May. So it's literally just a carbon copy, essentially, of what they're going to do on the full blown assessment, obviously with different questions, but it's a complete run through. And so it's going to be an entire ELA or an entire math assessment, however you want to think about that. So it's all the targets, all the claims, very similar and aligned to the summative. Then we think about the IABs, or the interim assessment blocks. That's that second visual that you see on your screen. And those are designed as a step down, so a tier, kind of, if you imagine that we're focusing in and becoming more and more targeted. The IABs are more targeted than the ICAs. And these assess 3 to 8 targets in either math or ELA. So they're going to be one or the other. But an example might be, grade 3 ELA reading literary text, grade 3 math, operations and algebraic thinking, as opposed to the ICA, which is just going to simply be grade 3 ELA in its entirety, grade 3 math in its entirety. So then we can take even one step closer and hone in a little bit deeper and go to what we now have, or what we're calling the FIABs, or the focused interim assessment blocks. These are designed to assess 1 to 3 targets. So where the IABs previously were assessing 3 to 8 targets sort of in one domain or one cluster of skills, these focused IABs are now assessing 1 to 3 targets. So very, very a micro version of being able to hone in on 1 or 2 or 3 targets or standards, and really getting our assessment can now really be targeted based on what we're teaching. So these FIABs are designed, they're language arts or math based as well, but an example might be grade 3 math, multiply and divide within 100. So you can feel how that feels much different than grade 3 math, operations and algebraic thinking. And if you've ever given an IAB previously, it was super frustrating because we wanted to give the IAB because maybe we had taught a portion of the standards in the OA domain, for example. And so we wanted to give that IAB. And some of us, opted to tell kids, okay, for questions 1, I don't expect you to know the answer to questions 1, 4, 7, and 9. Just do the best you can. But all the other ones I'm going to count, I'm going to look at their scores. And now we can really give an assessment with, 10 to 12 to 15 questions that are intentionally honed in on those standards that we've taught, or those targets that we've taught in the specific multiply and divide within 100, for example. So now your whole assessment is going to be assessing their understanding in that domain or that target. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of a sort of overview on how things, you can imagine it sort of going from macro to micro, depending on your intention. So they all have a place. As the teacher, we just have to decide what is it that I'm looking for today. All right. We took the interim assessments themselves, and then just gave us a little bit of a different visual of a way to kind of think about it. So those ICAs, we're just going to straight out say it, like, we're not huge fans. All we hear from teachers all the time is, gosh, that assessment at the end of the year is rigorous. It's, the kids, they hate it. It's so long, it's intense. We hear all of these sort of negative adjectives around it. So I guess then that begs the question from us, why would we give it twice? Why would we give it to them once as a practice and then once as the real thing if it's so torturous to give them in the first place, if that's kind of the message that we're hearing? It's very time intensive. It replicates the summative. And the other piece that people sometimes forget is that it has to be given in its entirety. So you cannot just give the CAT portion. You have to give the CAT portion and the performance task for language arts, for example, before the scores will be released. So oftentimes we get a call from a teacher and they'll say, I gave the ICA today and I can't find my scores. Well, did you give the performance task? No, I don't want to give the performance task. I just want to. Well, you're not going to get any scores till you give the performance task. And then after you give the performance task, by the way, you also have to hand score all of them. And then you get your scores released. So there's just a lot of teacher must do's when we give that ICA. So it's not that we don't think it has a place, it's just not our favorite tool. Then we think about the IABs and the FIABs. These sort of sound to me, thinking about being in the classroom, these seem much more doable, much more achievable, much more usable, and much more flexible in the classroom. That's a lot of IBLs, but I feel like all of them relate, right? It's very relatable. So these are short sets of items, 5 to 15. So you're not going to, really do more than 15 questions, which is a super doable amount for a kid, even in third grade, to do. The blocks can be done in one sitting, which is a bonus, especially for those of us who might have a period type schedule where we have, kids for period 1 and they go away, and then we get period 2 and they go away. And we don't have the luxury of being able to spend, 6 hours on giving an assessment with the same kids. There's only a few of them that require any sort of hand scoring. And Cass, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're only in ELA, the hand scoring. I don't think the math, do they have?
Other than the performance task in math.
Right. So there's a couple of ELA assessments that do require hand scoring. But again, you're only looking at 5 to 15 questions, so that's pretty doable. And then in the IABs and FIABs that do require hand scoring, it's not every question that needs to be hand scored. There's generally only a few questions within an assessment that you need to jump in and hand score. And then our favorite part, I think, about the IABs and the FIABs is their flexibility of how we can use them. So you can use them in the standardized form, which is give them to all the students and in a standard sort of typical testing sort of environment. And every student has it on their computer and they answer those, do the assessment and answer the questions and submit it as they would any assessment. And then the non-standardized version, that's really the only descriptor we have. So use it how you need to use it. If as a teacher you want to put one question up a day and walk through it and have kids working on it in groups or talking through the strategies or discussing what the question's asking, investigating the tools, there's no law that says you cannot do that. So the non-standardized version really does allow for a lot of flexibility in how the teacher can expose students to not only the assessment itself, but more importantly, the tools within the assessment itself, because that format familiarity piece, once we can overcome that, we see huge jumps in scores. So getting our kids in that system to touch and use the tools as often as possible is really our big sort of message. If we could rent a billboard, that would be what it would say. Get the kids in the system early and often to practice with the tools. So that's why we have that sparkling, glittering sort of green arrow pointing to the IABs, because those are kind of our main focus and go-to. By the way, guys, if you're going to Google us or look for us on social media, please make sure you do Glitter Gals EDU, and don't just leave it at Glitter Gals, because if you're on a school filter, it probably won't get through. And if you're not on a school filter, well, you can't unsee things that you might see. So I assure you, our profession does not involve polls. So we're here to tell you Glitter Gals EDU is what you really want to make sure you're focusing on. Don't make that mistake. So using the IABs, and I can't make that up, guys. I promise you 100%. A principal did that right in front of us at a session we were at. He Googled us and forgot the EDU part, and it's a true story. So using IABs and FIABs for that formative assessment process. So Smarter Balanced is all about formative assessment. And at first, I thought, oh my gosh, like one more term, if I have to learn one more term as a teacher, I'm liable to just forget it and work at Walmart. But this is something that after I dug in a little bit with teachers, we're all doing this. I think it's just good teaching, and it's what you're already doing, right? It's a cycle. It's a process. You're clarifying the learning. You're eliciting evidence from the kiddos in some way, you're interpreting it in some way, and then you're doing some kind of action or reteach. And we just do that already. We didn't necessarily know that it was like a formal process, but it is. And it's the formative assessment process. So it's ongoing, it's instructional, it's iterative. and an important part of what we do. The formative assessment process, however, is not something you do one time. It's definitely not a tool to assign grades. So we shout that from the rooftops. We do not condone, and I don't think Smarter Balance does either. We should not be using these IABs and FIABs and ICAs as grades. They're really intended to be a teaching tool and a learning tool, not an assessment tool per se for grades. And then, this is something that is not done after the learning cycle. It is part of the learning cycle. So it's done sort of simultaneously while our kids are involved in the learning.
I have a question about that. Is that okay
Yep.
now, or would you like me to put it in
Go
the
ahead.
chat? And so what I wanted to do with my staff was to make it a participatory thing in terms of a grade, not a straight grade in terms of their performance or what they're doing, but the fact that they're engaged in what we're doing, and that's part of the grade itself. And so can you help me kind of ferret out whether I should even be doing that at all? Because I'm trying to also make sure that if there's some level of not salesmanship at the high school level in terms of why they're doing these things.
So two parts to that, and if Cass agrees or disagrees, I'll encourage her to say so. So first of all, I'm raising a high schooler, so thank you for all that you're doing, because raising one is hard enough, let alone teaching one, or 30 a day per period times 5 or 6 or 8. So your job is underrated, and there's a special place in heaven for you. However, I don't know that I necessarily have a problem with using them for participation. I mean, that's the intention, right? We want our kids participating. And I know from raising a high schooler that if there's not some kind of incentive attached to what we're doing, then why should I get out of bed? Why should I sign in? Why should I do what I'm doing? So, our message is more about assigning like letter achievement grades. Like, oh, you failed this IAB, so now you have an F in math. So that's kind of what we're trying to stay away from. Certainly, if they complete it or didn't complete it, especially in distance learning, right? We need to have some way to track what our kids are doing. So if you're giving them a done or not done participatory piece, I don't know that I am overtly opposed to that. It's more about the assigning of the actual letter grade and having that affect and impact their academic achievement is sort of where that red line is for me to not cross. Cass, do you have a different?
Yeah, no, and I'm on the same thing, but per the state of California, they sent out a memo, and they kind of reiterate this message that we are not to use the interim assessments as grades. They're to be part of the formative assessment process to help us drive instruction, but they're not supposed to be a part of our grading.
Does that help, Jose? Can I call you Jose? I think you might be muted, my friend.
I apologize. I was pressing my space bar, hoping that would get me off of mute.
No problem.
So I hear you, because I have 5 kids and I have 2 teenagers of my own, and that is kind of that motivation for me as well. And I just want to give the teachers some tools in order to engage students so that it isn't an altruistic, you get a letter grade for this, but that the bar is set a little higher in terms of their participation in the process, and their understanding that this is not something that you can just skim by because there's not that incentive for the grade. Right. So I think what I'm hearing is that it's okay to give them some participatory credit for it, but that this isn't like an assessment grade, which is fine.
And you're gonna know, whether they completed it or not when you go into your SIRS dashboard and you look at their data, right? So you're gonna know if they completed or didn't complete it based on your reports. Yeah. Awesome. Great question. Okay, so yeah, I see in the chat box, Cass, did you get that about the memo to find that from the state? I do remember seeing that as well. We'll see if we can't find that for you and include it in our email that we send out to you at the end. So Julie, thanks for asking that. So Cass is going to talk to us now about the data-driven instruction loop. To kind of talk to you a little bit about how our district has implemented these IABs and how we're using them with some significant successes with kiddos and teachers. So take it away, Cass.
Thank you. So now that we have a common background in regards to interim assessment blocks, I'm going to take you through the data-driven instruction loop. And this is something I can tell you I'm very passionate about. It's something that I have implemented at my school specifically with a cohort of 6 teachers. And then when I shared it with my other curriculum coaches, it spread like wildfire throughout our district. And we were super excited to be using it, and we had teachers excited and students excited. That's I think the key part is that our students were excited and to be a part of this experience. So I'm really excited to be able to show it to you. Oh, and thank you, Tammy, for finding the ed code that says interims won't be used for high state purposes. Perfect. Thank you, Tammy, for your support there. So, I'm going to take us through the loop. And so like we said before, we prefer the IABs and the focused IABs. We like to do the smaller chunks. It's a little bit more achievable, and I think it helps teachers and students together. So step 1, we're going to start collecting the data. We're going to pre-test students using a focused IAB or an IAB. Now, things to consider. How do your standards relate to the Smarter Balanced testing system? How do the standards you're teaching in the classroom relate to this? And one great resource you can use is a Smarter Balanced Content Explorer. I'm going to click on this link. It's a live link here. The Smarter Balanced Content Explorer will help you see how those are connected. If you have not seen this tool before, I highly recommend it. It's amazing. And it shows how our California Common Core standards connect to the Smarter Balanced system. So you just go about selecting your grade level. So I'm going to do grade 4. I'm going to select English Language Arts or math. I'll select math. And then we are talking Smarter Balanced lingo here. So we're going to select a claim. So concepts and procedures, problem solving, communicated reasoning, modeling, and data analysis. When we're dealing with math and most of the IABs and focused IABs, you're going to be in claim 1. That I know from experience from using the system, I go to claim 1. And then you can go by target or standard. Since most of us as educators don't necessarily know all the Smarter Balanced targets, I think it's easier to go to standard, and then it lists all of my 4th grade standards, and then it will put it into a target for me. So for example, I'm going to do I'll do NF3D. So numbers and fractions. And then it tells me the target. It's target G, build fractions from unit fractions. So once again, it's just going to connect everything for you guys. And then it's going to tell you all about that claim and target and standard and how it's tested on, how you see it on the test, what the achievement levels look like on the test, question stems, vocabulary. I mean, it has it all for you. So it's a really great tool. I highly recommend that you use that.
Cass, we have a question in the chat box, 2 of them. Is this information that we can also find in the item specs? Yes. The information that's on here. We just feel like the Content Explorer is just so much easier to use for teachers. Sometimes those content specs or the item specs get a little bit wordy. So this is just sort of the main gist of the information. Certainly if you're used to using the item specs, and there's not different information, it's just different places to find it. And then the second question is claim one is worth 50% of the CASP. Am I right?
I wouldn't necessarily say that claim 1 is worth 50% of the CASP. And if we're talking about math, because it just depends, once again, because it depends on the DOK level, it depends on the item type, there's so many other things that it's dependent on when you're
just
talking
math.
about. Okay, so if we're looking at the whole global like point system of things, claim 1 typically that you might see more questions, but they're lower level questions as opposed to claim 2, 3, and 4, which are worth more because they're usually higher DOK level. The item type is worth more. So it just kind of depends. It is not the same for ELA. When you look at ELA claims, and I can click on grade 4 and change to ELA. ELA claims are broken up differently, and you'll see ELA claims are almost broken down, almost by kind of like an anchor standard almost, but we have reading, writing, speaking and listening, and research and inquiry. And those are kind of all mixed together. And once again, it just depends on the DOK level, the item type, how it's tested. So yes, I
got it. I'll get it.
Perfect. So she's going to post that live link to you guys. So that's one tool for you guys to use from Smarter Balance to see how your standards are going to link up to the test. Which IAB or focused IAB should I administer? I recommend 1 per loop. I'm going to say that again, guys. 1 per loop. Only choose ELA or math if you're an elementary school teacher. If you're middle school or high school, you're going to naturally pick 1 for your subject, but you only need to pick 1. We're only going to hone in and focus it on 1. So I highly suggest picking 1 subject. And if you're not sure which one you want to hone in on, we've also got another great resource here, and I will link this in the chat. This is the interim assessment overview. And it's a great PDF. They release it every year from Smarter Balanced. But if you scroll down, I'm going to go past all these lovely words. And if I scroll down, they have page by grade level. So this one is 3rd grade, and it tells me all the tests that are released by that grade level. So this is ELA, and then it'll do math, and it'll tell me the claims and the targets, and it'll tell me if you see these little ones right here, means there's going to be hand scoreable items. So this will also help me hone in on which ones I want to select and decide which ones to choose. I started with one in our district that I felt that we really needed to concentrate on, which was the listen and interpret IAB. Now it's a focused IAB actually. And we decided on that because that is one of the lowest scores that we get on the state test. That claim is scored extremely low. I mean, throughout the state of California. So I really wanted to hone in on this and see what exactly the students were doing on this test. So that's where I started, but you know your kids, and so you'll certainly know which one would be best to start with. So step 1, again, we're going to be collecting that data.
How long is a loop, Cass?
A loop, thank you. A loop is going to be about a month long. So it's going to be about 4 weeks. So you'll see we do the pre-test. We do two cycles of explicit instruction. And you'll see what I mean by that. And then our post-test. So a loop is about a month long. We do it once a week. I went in and did it with my teachers once a week. So our step 2 here, we're going to go and we're going to analyze the data. So you're going to use observational notes. Extremely important to walk around while they're taking the IEBs and take observational notes. You will see how much your students actually know about the format of the test by doing this. And you're going to use your SIRS, which I'm going to take us to the California Educator Reporting System. And we're going to do that. We're going to use these 2 type of data analysis to now take it to the IB data analysis protocol that we got from Val Verde School District, and we're going to create a SMART goal. So I know this is a lot right now. However, I'm going to take you step by step right now and send you all these links. Okay. So observational notes, super important. Walk around. What are your students struggling with, format or content? When I started with for example, the listen and interpret IAB, I found out that my students they struggled with the format quite a bit. They didn't know specifically that when they were listening that maybe they should be taking notes while they're listening. They struggled with some of the answer choices. So I discovered that it wasn't necessarily that they couldn't do this test. It was the fact that they weren't sure about the format of the test. So it wasn't necessarily all about the content at this point. So observational notes, super important. Then we take a look at the California Educator Reporting System. So I'm going to click on it right here. It's a live link. It takes us straight to our interim assessment page on the CASP website. And when you scroll down, you're going to see these two lovely buttons down here. The California Educator Reporting System, this is the live link with your data in it. And the reporting system sandbox is a great place for you to start if you've never, ever gone in the system or seen any of the reports or anything like that, because you can go and touch every single button and play with it. You won't break it, promise. I've tried. And you can see how everything works in there and how we can really begin to look at that data.
Cass, how do you modify your loop practice for remote learning? Like when you're doing student observations and or that kind of thing?
So great question. So observing students is a little bit harder right now. And the interim assessments are open now that to the point where they don't have to log into the Air Secure system right now. So you could keep them on a Zoom, for example, and observe them while they're taking the test. That way, obviously through facial expressions and so forth. But the observational ones are a little bit harder, obviously through distance learning. So what I would do is I would go and possibly survey the students afterwards. I had some great discussion with them after a test and said, tell me, what were your stars? What went well during this test? What do you feel like you could do? And then what were the stares? What was difficult? What was hard for you to do? And a lot of times I would collect their notes because I could see if they took notes or not. I can tell you the first time they took the listen and interpret test, I got 26 out of 34 blank papers. 26 of them were blank. None of them took notes. So that told me a lot as a coach. These kids need to learn how to take notes. So I think there's ways around it in remote teaching, definitely. So we're going to go in there and you're going to look at the reporting system. Once again, if you have not done an IAB yet or don't have anything in the reporting system, use the sandbox. Practice with the sandbox. That's what I did with educators before we started these loops. And then here's the IAB data analysis protocol. This is adapted from Val Verde School District. They shared this at one of their, I want to say, North-South CASP conferences. And it's a step-by-step process, just a way to look at data. Now, if you have a way to look at your data, fantastic. This is just one way that we found that could help us really analyze and really hone in on and see what our kids would need during this time. So, and it takes you step by step. So we look at the AIEB, we see how many kids are above, near, or below standard, and then it takes you step by step how to analyze with pictures. So this is, you guys will have access to this, and I'll send it to you now because I'm probably guessing some of you would like this right now. Oops, I put it up.
Well,
No,
you apologized, right?
There we go.
Yeah. What did you? I want you to tell me so you don't.
And as you can see down here, we're gonna start sorting by full credit because we're trying to see really what the most difficult questions are and what questions our students missed. So we're really going to sort by full credit to see which ones you'll see like kids with 0 at. Because I had kids answer 100% 0 on some of these questions. And then you're going to click on the item number and the item view to see the question so you can really dig deep. This system has a lot in it. We can really dig deep. You can look at the item viewer. You can see what was supposed to be answered, and you can see how your students answered the question, more importantly. So now you can start thinking like a student and say, what was their misconceptions about this? How come they weren't able to answer it? And then we have a few follow-up questions like, what patterns did you notice in the incorrect responses? What do you believe was the cause of students answering the question incorrectly? So just some things to really help dive deeper through this process. And then once we've gone through the analysis, we create a SMART goal with the teacher in the class. What do we expect the students to do by the end of our data loop? What would we like to see? If 50% of our class was in the red, can we move some of the red, so to speak, into the yellow, which would be near, or can we move some of our yellow into the green, which is above? And I see the chat blowing up right now. So
I got it.
okay, just making sure.
Yep. Most of them asking for questions of where do they find the protocol link. So I put that link in the chat box, what you were going over.
Okay,
And as just a quick reminder, we are going to send you everything that we're using today. None of it, we won't hold any of it back. So all of it will be sent to you in your email. If previous history repeats itself within the next 30 minutes after our session today. So you'll have it. We're pretty quick to get those done.
yeah. So I feel honestly, guys, the data analysis protocol, when I was shown this, it was like gold to me. We even put it in our curriculum units because we write units for our district. We put this protocol in there to remind teachers, hey, we should be looking at data this way. So I can tell we have an audience that's hungry for that, and that's awesome because it's amazing. It's worth its weight in gold for sure. So moving on to step 3. So now that we've collected our data, we've analyzed the data, we've seen what our kids are having issues with. Now we're going to make instructional decisions. We're going to use the connection playlist associated with the IEB or focused IEB to locate instructional resources within tools for teachers. And what I've done is I've taken a screenshot here for you guys. But while you are in SIRS, or you're even in the sandbox, because these buttons are live in the sandbox, you're going to select this blue button right here underneath the IEB or FIEB you took. It's actually located right at the top. And it will connect you to the connections playlist linked to this assessment. And what I mean by connections playlist is it's going to give you a progression of skills that the student should be able to do when they're below, at, or above. And then it's going to give you resources to help you with the students and teach the students those particular lessons that they need to have to fill those gaps, so to speak. Now, you don't only have to use the connections playlist link. I found sometimes that our district curriculum had amazing things in it. For example, listen and interpret. I found they weren't taking notes. So we're a thinking maps district. So I really honed in on what thinking map should we be using while we're listening to this. So I really honed in on the use of thinking maps whenever we saw a listen and interpret item on the test. These resources, the instructional resources, are also located here at the Smarter Balanced Tools for Teachers site. And this is just a quick link to the site. This is the brand new site, just launched September 30th, and it's full of amazing resources created for teachers, by teachers, that will link to all the claims and targets within Smarter Balanced. I highly recommend when you have a chance to take a look through here because it's amazing. Any questions we have going on right now, Tanya? I see the chat blowing up.
Yeah, everybody's so Caesar shared that just a tip in general that when students are answering questions, if it has circles next to the multiple choices, then they know that they can only select one answer. If it has squares next to the answers, then they can select more than one. So just as a sort of a little tip there for kiddos. And then just a couple of other questions. Is that protocol done around individual or class analysis?
Ooh, that's a great one. That one, the protocol was done around a class analysis. And then if you notice, it's a class analysis, but then you can go in granular and look at the individual student. So even though we're looking at as a class as a whole, you can also look at it by individual student. And that's what I love about the system, is that you can look at it macro or micro. It's kind of however you want to look at your data. Great questions.
And then the Tools for Teachers website is amazing. So thank you for that, Shelley. Cass and I, and Tammy is on here as well. And I'm sorry if I missed anybody else. It was so great being part of that team to create that. It was sort of became our, we got brought on board as contractors of Smarter Balanced, and then it sort of morphed into this being sort of our passion project, if you will, over the last, 3 3 years that we've been working on getting this vision out of our heads and onto the internet. So we're thrilled to have been part of that, and we're loving that teachers are loving it. And then there's a question from Caesar, but I did defer it and just said we'll check in with him after. So there's a couple of responses to that. So if you're with Caesar and wanting to get some clarification on that, just hang tight. We'll get to you. We want to make sure we get through our content today.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So so step 3, I'm making the instructional decision. I'm deciding, and I'm going to be deciding on 2 lessons right now. So I'm looking at what lessons I need to teach them and really hone in on. And then going to the next one is step 4, the actual plan, where I'm going to start implementing that plan. I plan 2 rounds of focused instruction using the Connections playlist or your district curriculum, whichever one will work for you. And these should link to your growth areas. So when I was looking at listen and interpret, we practiced on taking notes and how do we take notes, and we really practiced on honing in on the circle maps when we did this process. And how we listen as students. That was a big lesson for kids to learn, is just even how to sit there and listen to somebody talk, especially when they have no visual in front of them, because our kids are very visual learners. They're so used to watching YouTube and seeing that YouTube person interact with them, whereas they're not always used to just listening with their ears to what's on the screen. So we practice those. Now, if you feel like you need more or you need less, that is completely up to you. I just found that 2 focused lessons seem to be the sweet spot. It seemed to be what could really work and show improvement. And so right here, this picture where it says 4 operations, interpret, represent, and solve. This is a little snapshot of one of those Connections playlists that you will find in the tools for teachers. And as you can see, it has the below, near, and above levels, just like you would find in your reporting system. And it tells you what students should be able to do at each of those levels. And then right here on the topics, if we look underneath each topic name, when you see the little blue title with an arrow, like this one says lemonade stand, this is the actual resource. This is the lesson with all the materials you need to use to teach that particular lesson. So if my kids really needed to focus on solve word problems with an unknown using all 4 operations, I would go look at lemonade stand and see if I could implement that as one of my lessons. Each Connection playlist currently right now has at least 3 resources linked to it. I'm going to say that again, at least 3. We are currently still adding more. We are holding more Smarter Balance workshops to have teachers create more resources. So this is getting wealthier and wealthier by the minute, because we are getting more and more rich resources put in there by the minute. So I just took this little snapshot, because if we go and take you in for tools for teachers, that could be a whole hour on itself. That's for sure. And I see the chat blowing up again. Any questions for me, Tanya?
There was some issues with the audio, but hopefully we've rectified that. I didn't hear any issues with the audio, but some were reporting it.
Okay.
And interim assessments, are interim assessments available now for remote learning? In May, I think I was able to take one without a secure browser with my students at home.
Yes.
So I did put in the chat box, yes, the interim assessments are available now. And then Sophia is asking, would you implement this as whole class instruction?
I would. I did whole class instruction because I was a curriculum coach. So I was going in once a week to help out the student as this class as a whole. So yes, I would do it as whole class instruction, but most certainly you could do small group instruction as well. I've seen it done both ways, and both definitely benefit from it. So it's, once again, it's kind of up to you. I've had teachers who hone in on, let's say the 5 low students, like what skills are they missing to help them move up. And so I've seen them do the small group work, and that does have benefit as well. But I was doing whole class, and you could see it help everybody in the whole class, because even our high students can still go higher. They, on the test, like it doesn't cap out or anything. So they can still go higher. We can still push them on to the next level. So our high students will benefit just as much as our low students, for sure.
And I did a small targeted group, the listening domain specifically. A teacher asked me to come in and do it just with her ELs. And so my instruction obviously looked a little bit different because I was providing them with structures and supports that would be relevant to an EL learner. And so I came in and did that similar, the listening one, but just with a small group of 5 or 6 EL students. So certainly both ways work. And however that works best in your if you're doing remote learning and you're doing small groups, then by all means, we don't want to change what you're doing. The question came in, do the lessons have ideas for differentiation? So Julie, are you speaking about the lessons in the tools for teachers or the lessons in our loop that we were using?
Kind of both, actually. So if you're gonna loop back to one of those lessons to focus your instruction,
Mm-hmm.
Just in general, do those lessons kind of give you ideas for how to meet the needs of all of your learners?
Yeah, the tools for teachers lessons, 100% absolutely. That was one of our brainchild proud moments. Every lesson in the tools for teachers website, every single resource that's in there has differentiation built in. So for your at standards, above standard, and below standard learners. So yes, and that the other big piece with that we really strove to sort of hit home with is that differentiation does not mean that we should be providing a different grade level instruction. So we're providing differentiation. If a 4th grade student is below standard, we're not now giving them 2nd grade curriculum. We are giving them 4th grade curriculum differentiated for a 4th grade learner who is working below standard. So to be clear with that, we really wanted to make sure that our lessons had those as well. And regarding the lessons that we have in our loop here, same thing. There would be easy, I don't know that it's overtly provided in there, but as you're teaching, so you're going to be providing that differentiation, and your differentiation might be small groups. That might be how you choose to do it if you have learners at multiple different levels. Great question.
All right, so we're going to be moving on to number 5. So step number 5, this is our last step in our loop, and now it's time to reflect. So we've done the 4 weeks. They're going to, on their last week here, test the students again using the same IEB or focused IEB from step 1. And I know the question's already going to come. Is the test any different? No, the test is not different. But I can guarantee you that the kids don't necessarily remember taking the test 4 weeks ago. I've had students that were like, oh yeah, now I kind of remember it, I guess. But it's going to be the same test. So we're comparing apples to apples here. And then we're going to compare the results, and we're going to reflect, and we're going to celebrate growth. That is the important thing here. I'm not trying to get all my students to the above level. I feel like that's unrealistic because I'm going to have students who are going to struggle in the below level quite a bit. However, can I have them still show growth? Can they still grow? And yes, they can. And so I feel like that's the important thing to focus on here is to celebrate that growth. So when you compare your pre and post data, keep a couple things in mind. What do you notice and what do you wonder when you look at that data? And then how can you use the data to start a new loop? So maybe you pull small groups out of the data that you're looking at, or maybe you want to stick to language arts because language arts seems to be a harder one than the math. But once again, I'm going to tell you guys above anything else, celebrate growth. And I'm going to tell you this story right now. We're showing you a little snapshot of data right here. This was student data, just data that I pulled from the SIRS reporting system, and I put it into a data sheet so that it could be color coded. It could tell me, how much they grew and everything like that. And specifically what CASP accessibilities they used, because I had some students on IEPs that I wanted to make sure that they knew what accessibilities they were going to be using at the end of the year, and that I turned them on during the interim assessment so that they could get used to those tools. But this little guy right here, I'm going to tell you right here, fourth row, below standard at 2233. He grew 149 points, still at the below level, but grew 149 points. This is the kiddo that he had told me, I hate taking these tests. I can never do good on these tests. Why am I even bothering? I can never do anything right. And we got to celebrate him that day because he was one of the highest students who grew on the test. And it was amazing. He was jumping up and down, smiling. I think this is the first time I had seen him smile that year. And he felt like he had accomplished something. So just because he's still at below doesn't mean that our students can't grow. And I think that was the most powerful lesson that these students learn, is that we can grow. As you can see here, we did have some students move bands. So from below to near standard, and even from near to above. And I told them, awesome, you guys are moving, bands, you're moving up a color. And I always kept that, just reiterating, but I want to see your growth. Can you grow? Because especially when we're even looking at the California dashboard is comparing us against us. It's not comparing us against any other school or school district. It's comparing us against us. So can we be able to show that growth? And I can tell you by the end of the year, these students would be like, is it time to take the post test? Do I get to know how much I grow? How much did I grow? Like, they were anxious to hear these scores. Like, I had kids excited, stopping me in the hallway because they wanted to know how they did on their post test. So it went above and beyond what I thought, because I had students now excited for once to be in the CASP system. Tanya, do we have some questions?
Yep. So a couple of things. Another question about, will we be sharing the presentation? So yes, the answer is yes. Everything that you see and hear from us, you'll get today. A specific question about the Google Sheet template is that, I can't remember if we included that in there, but we certainly could, a link to a blank one, like a template. So just with that, guys, we downloaded the scores from SIRS. So after the students took the IAB, we downloaded them in an Excel format and then just converted it to Google Sheets, because we live, eat, sleep, and breathe anything that starts with Google. So we converted it and then just color coded and kind of made it happen. So it was something that we created for our own intentions and purposes, not something that it may or may not be universally helpful and useful. So again, it's dependent upon what your district trends are, what your data needs are, and what you're looking at. And then there was another question about, how do you figure out the growth based on the scores? So I'm thinking they're trying to ask, is there like a list of, cut scores, like that kind of thing?
So a great thing about cut scores, and I'll go back to that page. When you are getting your report in SIRS, it's going to give you the number, and it's going to give you below, near, or above standard. So it gives you the number, and it gives you this within the SIRS system. So this is not something that I had to figure out. It was told to me within the SIRS system. There is a cut point, but there's not necessarily a clear cut point on IABs and FIABs, because it's the small part of the system. The ICA replicates the summative, and so there's clear cut points on the summative, but there's not necessarily clear cut points on the IABs, because it's a small chunk of the test. And it's dependent on the item types that are released within the IABs and how much each of those item types are worth as well. So I don't have exact cut points, because it's all going to be different depending on each IAB and how Smarter Balance composed those IABs. But there are specific cut points for the summative tests that relate to the ICA.
Perfect. So when you're downloading from SIRS, the question is, it automatically generates an Excel sheet. I think that's just one of the options. You can download it as an Excel. I think PDF was one of the choices. I can't remember what the other ones were, but there are some other pieces in there. And then we do have a question from Ramon about, can you demonstrate how to access SIRS? So I'm just going to put that question on hold for a moment until we get through everything. And then Ramon, we're happy to troubleshoot that with you. Shameless plug, we do have another session later today at, is it 3, Cass?
3:15, I believe.
3:15, called Smarter Balanced Roadmap. And in that session, we will be digging into every single piece of the Smarter Balanced system, from standards and frameworks all the way to summative and every piece in between. We will be opening, touching, clicking, linking, and testing and playing in all of the different pieces. So if that's something that you feel like you'd like to get more information on how everything fits together, how do all the pieces fit, that session generally gets some pretty good reviews in helping clarify those questions. So Elizabeth's question is about the Google Sheet with the color-coded cell formulas. We will include that as well when we send you guys the information. We're just grateful that you feel like it's helpful. You know, so many times you do something in your classroom and you're like, wow, that went great. And then you share it, and then all of a sudden now it's just exciting, right? When you do something that can help others as well. So we're excited that you're excited. We will make sure you get all of those things. If not, our email will be in, you know, you'll be getting this information from us in our email. So we are 24/7 available email access. So if you get it and you're like, but where's the whatever you promised, just email us back and we'll send it, no problem. And then if you have a question a week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road, we're not going anywhere. Unless I win the lottery, I am moving to Tahiti and I will not be bringing my cell phone. So if that's the only caveat. But I'm guessing Cass will not be moving to Tahiti if I win the lottery. She might be coming to visit, but she'll be available if that happens.
So wrap up, because I see we only have 3 minutes left real quick. One of the most important things I don't want to forget about here is the student perspective. While we were doing this, I was shocked. I was literally shocked. I had students and teachers who were bummed that the test was canceled. We went out on to spring break, and then we got a call saying, nope, you're not coming back from spring break. You're out until the end of the year, pretty much. I had students, 6th graders, who were complaining that they didn't get to take the test because they wanted to show their growth. They were excited and prepared. Feelings of stress and worry about this test became feelings of confidence because they only had to improve upon themselves and they became familiar with the test. It wasn't one scary thing to take at the end of the year. We've been practicing every single month. We've been practicing this. So it wasn't something that had to be scary anymore. Like I said, the test format was no longer an issue. They knew how to use every single button. I don't know how many of my kids did not know there was a spell check in the performance task. It made my mouth drop. Like, I was like, what? You don't know there's a spell check? Well, we're going to use the spell check. And then goal setting for the summative test. We just before spring break, we had done goal setting for the summative test. This is what you got the year before. What would you like to see yourself be able to do this year? And so students were able to see their last year's scores and have a target in sight. And so they were super excited. They had their goals in their notebook ready, and they had their eyes like on the target. So it was just amazing to see the growth within the students and their growth mindset. It was no longer this big scary thing. We put in all the additional resources at the end here. So anything that wasn't linked up above, it's all linked on this page as well, so that you guys have it. And then I'm going to let Tanya roll with this because she's always good at this part.
So first of all, Cass, the chat is blowing up with, this has been my favorite training of the conference so far. I love the glitter gals, ditto Todd, thank you, great job ladies, smiley faces, etc. So guys, thank you. I posted it in the chat box, but our cup gets filled when yours gets filled. So we are so grateful for the feedback. It's our first sort of dip, one of our first sort of dips into virtual presenting. So it's kind of fun in a different format, but we're adjusting like all of us are. So we really appreciate that support. If you are not currently following us on social media, for shame, but we are more than happy to accept new followers. So we're on all 3 platforms. Our brand new teachers at our new educator conference last December got us on Insta. So we are now officially Insta-ing as well. So you can follow us on any one of those platforms. Remember the EDU. So it's Glitter Gals EDU. And we, if you're going to
Oh, you went out.
learned today. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Tweet out something that you learned today from our session and then tag us and Smarter Balanced both in your tweet. Smarter Balanced loves to retweet. So there's a chance that you could get retweeted today from them as well. So we're happy to stick around for a minute or two. Nikki, do we have the room for a few minutes to chat with answer some questions?
Yeah, the
Awesome.
room will close at 10:15.
Okay, so we have a few minutes. Can we say thank you to Nikki too? She's been our awesome room host. So she's been maintaining, getting everybody heading in the
And
right
don't forget the hashtag for today's conference too.
Yes, on our background here. So the question is, will your handouts be available in the conference's resources?
We're just gonna send them to you guys directly. It's just kind of how we do it when we go around to conferences, because a lot of times will have to change links and everything last minute. So if you just email us, you can email us if you don't get it. However, if you filled out the Google form, you'll be getting it within the next half hour. We'll be sending out our little follow-up newsletter with all of this information inside of it.
I have a question.
Yes.
I missed something. What's the connection playlist?
The Connections playlist is within the Smarter Balanced Tools for Teachers. And what it does is it takes the focused IAB, or IAB, and it hones in on all the skills, so to speak, that students needed to be able to do on that particular assessment, and tells you, like, all the skills, what they should be able to do at each level, below, near, or above.
Okay.
And then we give you resources that link to each one of those levels.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so one of the questions that was asked was, just trying to find it in the chat box. So Caesar wanted to dig into the 50% part. So I think I have an answer for that, because I was chatting with Tammy on the backside as well, just to make sure I wasn't wrong. And then the other part, somebody asked if they could share a sample. Who was that? Maybe Sophia or Carla. Somebody asked if we could share. I'm trying to find it.
I asked for the Excel. If you could.
Yeah, it wasn't that. The one that the students missed the most. If we could share an example of a question or the type of question that students missed the most, which I think is a matching item. I think that was the one that was the hardest, but I'll let Cass handle that, and I will dig into get Caesar's.
Like, how would you do it in the classroom? Like, if you, because we do the FI, we call them the 5Fs, but that's what we do. And we noticed, like, there was, like, last year when I did it, most of my students were getting this question. It was like most of the students in the class. So how do you introduce it to the students? What is the best approach on that?
And you said it was a matching item particularly?
No, I said that's the one that our kids seem to miss the most, was the matching item, but I think she's asking any question that you would.
Any kind of question. So I found one of the tools that I like to use is I actually like to use Pear Deck for some of the items that we do, because Pear Deck lends itself to model itself with some of these, and I get immediate feedback from my students telling me how they're answering on the question. Are you familiar with feedback at all, Sophia, by chance? Pear Deck, I mean?
Pear Deck? I've heard about it. I haven't.
Okay.
I mean, it's one of those tools that's been.
So what I'm going to say, Sophia, is if you could email us when we email you today, email us back. We do have, we do another session on this called Smarter Balance with Pear Deck. And it shows you how to kind of emulate some of the item types in Smarter Balanced on a Pear Deck so that you get the formative feedback. And it's a great tool to be able to use during distance learning. So yeah, and somebody says, have you used Nearpod? Nearpod works very similar as well. So you could use Nearpod or Pear Deck. They work very similar. But we do have a slide deck that tells you how to emulate some of those items and how to create obviously your own items so that you can get that formative assessment and you can use kind of those same item types that Smarter Balance uses.
So one of the questions was, are we allowed to take screenshots and put them in Pear Deck? I've heard mixed things. So I responded with, it is always not recommended to screenshot directly out of an IAB. Those are locked down and those are secure documents. So we don't ever want to bring them out of that system. However, all of those item types are item types that they're going to see on the summatives. So those item types are definitely on the sample items website. So anytime we use a sample item that we want to teach from, we pull it from the sample items website because that's a public site that even parents have access to. So we can certainly pull an item from there that aligns to the same item type that they're going to see on the IEB so that we can teach the type of item. But we just always disagree that we shouldn't, we just, for security and integrity purposes, we just shouldn't be screenshotting out of the actual IEB system for any purpose. Printing, Google Forms, we just shouldn't. So there's a reason why you need a password to get in. If we start taking it out of there, like people did on Teachers Pay Teachers, we had complete IABs downloaded in PDF format on Teachers Pay Teachers. So it's a violation of copyright. I don't know any other way to say it.
And somebody has a great question. If we don't have any results from last year, how should educators address areas of need? And during my presentation, I said, listen and interpret because this is an area of need. It's not going to hurt to go back to the previous year's results. If we need to go look at 2018, 2019 and see what one of the claims that we need work on, it's not going to hurt to look at that area because they didn't get to take the test last year. They probably didn't get to practice that part of it last year. So they probably still need to still have some work to do in those particular areas of growth. Just observe your students in your classroom and see what they need. If you think their writing needs to be improved upon, maybe you want to start in one of the writing areas. If you're teaching math and you notice they're having a hard time with that multiplication, maybe that's where you want to start. So it's kind of hard because we don't have results, but definitely it's not going to hurt to go back to the previous year that we do have results and find out some information from that for sure.
Sophia wants to know if we offer any one-on-one trainings. Sophia, you're sweet. I'm looking for Sophia so I can find her little cute face wherever she might be hiding. There she is. She has sort of the Edna mode camera angle going on from the nose up. That's what my high school daughter's favorite way of attending all of her Zoom meetings is just for her eyeballs to be showing. So yes, we certainly do. So we've done professional development for other districts. We've done it for grade levels. And we can certainly work something like that out if you're looking for more of just a one-on-one check-in with a couple of questions. I mean, we're certainly happy to help, however we can help you. So you kind of decide if it's something that you feel like you're maybe grade level or school itself. We've done a couple, 3rd through 6th grade teams. We've done a couple of school site grade level different things. So we can do those as well. Actually, we can almost do them easier now because there's no travel involved. So we can do them virtually if your team or school is in need of that as well. So just let us know what you need and we can always find a way to work it out. How many of these cycles is it possible to complete during a school year if you have both ELA and math to address and it takes a month for any one cycle?
So no joke, I started in August, my first cycle at the end of August last year. And we were able, I think, to complete 8 cycles. So we got 4 ELA and 4 math done. So it's not realistic to get through all of them. And why why get through all of them? There's, you know what I mean? Focus on the ones that you feel like they need, that have the most need, and the rest are going to come along because they're going to get used to the system. They're going to get used to the question types. So so you're not going to get through every single one, but 8 seem to be the feasible way to do it.
4 and 4.
Yeah.
And you know, I think she's right, making that connection with kids. So we talk so much about, you know, kids learn all these words on their spelling test, but then I never see it in their writing. So that transference of knowledge, right, is so important in having context for the learning. So if we're working on a listening and speaking IAB, and we're doing a couple of intentional reteach lessons with them, and we're talking about, for example, the matching item. Now, we're going to have a conversation that matching item is not going to only just show up in a listening and speaking question, right? It's going to also show up in math. It's going to also show up in reading. It's going to also show up in, you know, these different IABs. So now it's more of an intentional discovery of, guys, when you see a matching item, I want you to, you know, put your little eyeball glasses on, and I want you to really, you know, so you're now being overt about where else can we find these items, and how else can we implement that learning to go with them.
Somebody asked if we had it for LPAC. LPAC is kind of fairly new. Like it really just launched last year full blown with all of its components. So it's still something fairly new. So we do not have anything for LPAC as of right now. How would you approach for science? Science is still fairly new. They're still releasing items. And with science, I would just take it one question at a time, like dig deep and find the questions that are released right now that pertain to the particular topic that you're teaching, and just really dig deep and do one question at a time. Because I think those are going to really help if you just start digging deep into those, especially the performance, the embedded performance tasks. And them learning how to work through those. I think that would help.
We appreciate you guys. We know that Nikki has to get to another meeting here in a minute or two, so we're going to let her close out our room. But if you do need to get a hold of us, you know how to find us. We're on all social media. Yes, you can email us, whatever it takes. If you want to send an owl, I mean, whatever. So we're here and we're happy to help. It was great to meet you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hope to see you at 3:15.
Thank you.
Nikki, you've been an awesome hostess with the mostest.
Yes, thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Are you with us again later today, or is it someone different?
It's probably somebody different. Let me see what time you guys are at 3?
3:15, I think.
Yeah.
What's your title?
Smarter Balanced Roadmap.
Let's see. Smarter Balanced.
I don't know, maybe word got to the conference crew that we blew it this morning and we got X'd from the program.
No, I'm just wondering if they put it under, I said utilizing a smarter balance. You never know, I might not have an update calendar. Oh, right here. Who are you? You're with Amy.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
We appreciate it, Nikki. I think you're safe to shut the room down. We will talk to you when we talk to you.
Okay, have a great one.